Hey man, what's going on? It's your boy J Mike, one athletic freak, Mr. Athletic over everything on Instagram. Over the last few years, I've gotten a lot of questions concerning powerlifting, and I'm gonna start actually answering a lot of these questions with videos like this. Probably the most controversial one that I've gotten, and I've been very tempted to answer, is there a difference between tested powerlifting versus untested powerlifting? And I'm going to give you my thoughts on that. I think when you talk about tested powerlifting versus untested powerlifting, there are a few details or factors that are extremely huge when comparing these two. Start with taking drugs versus not taking drugs. That's probably the biggest factor of it all. The problem comes in is that most people think that at a certain level, everyone's taking drugs. So that kind of puts things kind of in an untrustworthy position, because if you see a natural guy put up a huge number, people automatically think that they're on drugs. So it forces people who are drug free to kind of state it and stand on it, and when you do that, it makes people who are on it uncomfortable, and then they turn the narrative around to, you think you're better than me because you're natural, or you have better genetics than me. So a lot of times that's one of the bigger cases in it. But we're going to start with some of the smaller things that I see all the time, and probably the biggest one for me, or one of the biggest ones, is the 2-hour weigh-in versus the 24-hour weigh-in. If you watch some of the top guys who lift in the non-tested federations, you see oftentimes these guys are cutting 30, 40, 50 pounds sometimes. You know, guys, walk around at 260 pounds training, and then 2 days out, he starts cutting, he gets down to 220. Have no idea how these guys do it, but after they weigh in, they get their weight back on them, and in most cases, they even get bigger than what they were when they started their cuts. You have, in the 2-hour weigh-ins, we don't have that same leeway. You kind of can't do it. If you make a substantial cut, it's going to affect you on the platform. And when you actually think about it, most of the people who are lifting the USAPL or the IPF, they're not going to gain as much trying to do those drastic cuts like that, just from the simple fact you're not going to gain strength when you do it. You'll just be doing it just to lose weight on the actual scales. I personally never really have to cut weight. I'm always typically under a 308 weight class, but I compete in a tested federation that doesn't honor or respect the 308 weight class. So if you're anything over 264 pounds, you're considered a super heavyweight. So it doesn't help me any to come in at 290 pounds. So what I do is I typically eat up and make sure that I just don't go over 308, so that my numbers, when you look at the grand scheme of things, powerlifting across the board, I'll always be in a 308 weight class. But that also hurts me on the flip side, lifting in the tested federation, due to the fact that I don't have a weight class. I walk around 290, have abs. So I'm not fat, but I'm 290 pounds. So do I cut 30 pounds to make it to 264 and then, have to battle with Dennis? Or do I get bigger and accept some extra weight and go battle with Ray Williams on a more competitive level? No. Those are two of the best power lifters of our generation, and chance of me beating those two guys are pretty slim. So what happens is I wind up just in this purgatory almost. I'm just stuck in the middle. So I just wind up I just coast and just do what I'm supposed to do as a master lifter and as a top nationally ranked 308 class lifter. It's just a very tough spot to be in. Like, if you also think about, I just did bench nationals where I went up against TD Davis, who's an amazing bench presser. He puts up a lot of weight. But the difference is that he's 140 pounds bigger than me. So the chance of me actually putting up more weight in a meet is going to be pretty slim. but I have a chance to beat him at Wilks. So you have events like the Arnold SSP Nutrition Pro Bench, where last year I actually, I'm not going to say I beat him, but he bombed out the meet. But that meet in particular is done on Wilks score. So I actually have a fighting chance in that situation. Or where most likely I will be heading to Finland to face up against him once again for the World Championships. I may not beat him in the actual meet, but I have a chance to actually beat him as the best lifter. So the goals are a little bit different, but these are things I have to start thinking about due to the fact that I'm lifting in a tested federation. Next, we have the USAPL and the tested federation. I'm not talking about the USPA tested part yet because it's not as established, but I'm basically referring to the USAPL versus all the other federations. The deadlift bar, or the mixture of bars. When you do USAPL, we use one bar. You're either going to use a Texas Power Bar, Ohio Power Bar, regular, or the one with the thin, the longer collar with the thin little butt on the end of it, or Laco. And that bar is stiff. It doesn't have a lot of flex. It's the same size. Versus you lift in the untested federations, for the most part, you're going to use a Texas deadlift bar. You're going to use a squat bar. A squat bar is 8 feet long versus a standard bar in the USAPL, I think it's 7 feet or something like that. So you basically have 3 different bars in non-tested federations, which play a huge part when you think about deadlift is the one that comes up most often due to the fact that you see guys are able to pull extra 60 to 70, 80 pounds more with the deadlift bar than you can with a stiff bar. So if you look at someone like me, I pulled 805 with a Texas deadlift bar, but my best pull with a stiff bar is 771. So it's a huge difference. So sometimes when you look at people's totals, you have to look at where they actually did the total, or where did they put that number up, because it wouldn't always say that that person's better. You know, I might be 10 pounds behind one individual, but then you find out that he lifted in a non-tested federation where they were able to be on their toes in terms of bench press. They were able not to have to squat to as deep as a USAPL squat, or they get touch and go bench commands. You know, these are all things that you have to look at. So sometimes when you're judging and critiquing lifters, you can't just go by number. The squat bar, I'm not a great squatter, so I don't get too caught up in the bar so much. But you know, having a thicker bar, wider bar makes it probably just a little bit more comfortable for the bigger guys. But I imagine if you're a small lifter, you probably don't gain much from that. But in terms of the deadlift, is a huge play, and that's a huge part when you start trying to compare totals with other guys. Did they use a deadlift bar? You know, did they have a squat bar? So that's one of the things that you'll look at. Standards. You know, there are some, you know, USAPL, IPF elitists who will say that the standard or the gold standard of powerlifting. And, you know, I'm not going to go that far with it, but what I will say is that I've gone to meets and seen meets that the judging was just as harsh as an IPF meet, but it's not as consistent. I would say that the non-tested federations are probably a little more consistent on being hard versus you do some of the other federations where you're more like, well, I went to a meet once and they were calling like an IPF official would, or something of that nature. And that plays a huge part. You know, with me being a big bencher, you know, how long they hold you at the top after you get your unrack versus the time they hold you at the bottom plays a huge part. And I'll probably add this clip into this, but I actually bench pressed 600 pounds for the first time, and I did it at a USAPL local meet. It was at a Summerfest, but It wasn't a huge meet. It was a big meet, but it just wasn't. It wasn't like a major meet. But I was held almost 3 seconds at the top from the time the person handed off to me, and then I was given almost a 2-second pause command at the bottom. So if you view that 600-pound bench press, there's no doubt in that particular bench press. No one can say anything about the legitimacy of it. It's 100% good, right? Versus I see some other people where they might have a 600-pound bench or a big bench, and the person who's calling is a little more eager to give them that start command, give them that press command. You know, they want to see them get the lift. You know, so but when you watch it back on video, it's not as impressive because you see that there are a bunch of holes that are put into the actual lift due to, you know, the judge's errors or things of that nature. And you know, I'm rarely on the side of getting a beneficial call, but you know, I just bench pressed 612 pounds, you know, for a record. And, you know, although the bar was stopped, but it was a fairly quick command, which I appreciate. But if you think about the rule book, it was within standard when the bar has to be motionless before you get your command. And that's what happened. But it wasn't as long as the 600 I did previous. So there are things and times where that will come in handy. I'm not going to say that the non-tested has no standards. It's just that the standards are muttered a little bit. You know, you watch some of the big meets that they have on live stream and whatnot, and you'll see a lot of high squats. You'll see a lot of deadlifts. You know, I remember, and a lot of world records went down from this year and last year's, I believe. And, you know, guys hitting a rack with the bench press, which I thought was an automatic no lift. Guys not locking out. And also seen it in other meets as well. But I'm just saying, those are things that you typically wouldn't see at an IPF level meet. All right. Next, I would say the fact that you claim natural, right? And the whole idea of being a natural athlete is kind of like one where you can say it, but no matter how much you say it, no one really believes you. It's almost like, you know, when you watch some of these movies and someone gets locked up and they go, "Hey kid, what you in here for?" Excuse me. They say, "Hey kid, what you in here for?" And he says, "I'm here for murder, but I didn't do it." And the guy who asked him the question turns around and asks all the other guys, say, "Hey, we're innocent too. No one in here does it." It's like, you can say what you want, but if you're putting up numbers that rival some of the guys who are in the non-tested federation, people assume you're cheating, you're lying, you must be cheating. If this person is lifting this much weight, there's no way possible a person of a similar size, similar age, is able to lift the same without drugs. And I think that's one of the ones that probably hurt the most, you know, and that causes some of the guys who are drug-free to come off arrogant, or to come off angry, or to come off almost like looking down on people who do take drugs, because when they achieve something, they're being knocked down because people are throwing them into the same mix. I remember one time, you know, being so drug-free and so anti-drugs that, you know, I started losing followers. You know, people who used to watch me or, you know, like videos or comment when I lift in the other federation I lift in, those people no longer do that because they feel as though I think I'm better than them now that I lift in a drug-tested federation, or I've become a IPF world champion, things of that nature. But in all actuality, it's just one of those things where you just want your credit. I just want my credit for what I've done. You know, if I did something a certain way, I want that respect for that. You typically see the argument between a little guy who's like a USAPL guy who doesn't have a huge total, and he's yelling at or talking about some big time dude that's in a non-tested fed who put up a huge number, and he'll say something to the effect, "If I was on drugs, I could put up that same total." In all actuality, that is not true. You know, I don't know how much steroids play a part, but I think it would be hard to say that if I was on juice, I wouldn't have a 5% total, 5% added to my total. But if you do that, you're talking about adding hundreds of pounds to my total. And now you're looking at, okay, so you're saying you might be the greatest powerlifter all time. So that's kind of hard to say as well. And I think that when the guys from that side of the world hear a top level drug-free guy, they take it differently. They take it almost as if you think you're better than me. You look down on me because you're natural and I'm not. I wasn't, and sometimes you'll hear like, I wasn't blessed with your genetics, or you don't understand my struggle or what I'm going through or why I'm taking this or that. So it kind of puts people at odds, you know, just because the people who are doing it what they perceive to be the right way, they just want their props. They just want their credit. And that's pretty much what my deal is. I don't really care what the other guys do. For the most part, my favorite lifters are guys who lift in the non-tested federations. But the problem comes when you start trying to compare people, or someone says, I'm better than you, or look what I've done and look what you've done. And it's like, I just feel you can't compare it. You can't take one guy who's natural his whole life versus a guy who jumps on drugs and then try to compare them. I just think it's really, really hard. And you can also look at the fact that when most guys who start off in the drug-tested federations, they're pretty average. But then when they leave and go to the non-tested federations, a lot of these guys blow up and start putting up huge numbers. So what is it? Like, were they really that good? Or they reached their natural potential and decided to take it to the next level? But see, someone like me, on the other hand, I started off in the non-tested federation as a natural lifter. And when I moved to the drug-tested side, a lot of people doubted and said, let's see if he totals 2,000 drug-tested with higher standards. And not only did I go 2,000, I went 2,004 more times since then. And I've gotten better every year. So I'm 100% real about mine. But a lot of these guys now who are at the top on the non-tested side started out in USAPL. And they just weren't good. They were average. So some of those guys needed drugs to get better. So, whatever. Okay. Supplements. Tested versus non-tested. And I'm not even talking about drugs or steroids. I'm talking about just a simple protein pre-workout, amino acid, inner workout, something of that nature. See if I have it around here. Okay. I used to be a guy who liked to try pre-workouts, One Strong pre-workouts. I can't do that any longer. If I do, it's a possibility that I fail a drug test because I took a pre-workout. So now I'm forced or relegated to taking something like this, C4. This has always been like a joke to me. I would never take anything like this. But it has a blue dot, which means NSF, safe for sports. So I should be able to take this and not have to worry about failing a drug test or anything of that nature. And that's one of the things, another thing that people don't realize. I also have to be at my gym every day at 2 p.m. just in case they need to randomly drug test me. I can't just go and live my life. I can't smoke marijuana, which I don't anyway. But that's something that I can't do under my drug testing and things of that nature. So I have to be very careful with the things I take. So what I started doing is just not taking anything. And to be 100% honest with you, recently, this is the first time this has happened, but I actually was drug tested 2 times in 72 hours. They came and did an out of test meet or something like that, drug test. They came to my home. I was drug tested. And then after my final deadlift, I was drug tested again. So the only difference in these 2 drug tests was, one, I had been taking absolutely no pre-workouts, no supplements at all. The one they did after the powerlifting meet, the only thing I was taking was C4, and I took some bare back and body aspirin or something of that nature. And that was it. So those are things that we have to deal with as tested athletes that people don't really think about. You just can't live your life like that. Every day I have to be somewhere for an hour. That's pretty hard, you know? So that's something else to think about. Okay. And also, The thing about lifting in the USAPL that's been a huge surprise or a huge shock is that you actually become a world champion. Like, no other federation allows you to be a true world champion, a true world competitor, where you actually travel the globe in powerlift. No other federation can offer you that. And I think that's actually pretty cool. You know, I've been to Belarus. I've gone to all kind of other cities. I've been to the islands, exposing powerlifting to people from all over the world. And that's going to continue this year, where I have Finland, I have Calgary, and I have other trips planned as well. So that's one of the things. So when you start saying, you hear people saying I'm a world champion of this federation and that federation, but it was in Las Vegas, and it's in Las Vegas every single year. So that's one of the things. Like, if you're trying to be a true world champion in whatever it is that you do, and depending if they say you don't have competition or not, you're actually competing with people from all over the world. When I was in Belarus, they had Team Japan, they had Russia, they had China, they had all these other countries, and no other federation can offer you that. So that's something else that you should look at when you start viewing, federations or things you want to do. Do you want to just lift in one country? Do you want to just lift state? You know, if you just